Hi everyone, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from the Dice Tower. Thanks for joining us.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Mycelium, a Mushling Game. Game designed by Eric Yadvish and published by Yadco Games. We are using a prototype copy of the game, and so rules and components may not be final.
Let's get to the game.
In Mycelium, players are competing colonies of fungi known as mushlings, heading out into the ecosystem attempting to gather nutrients for their colony. Competition for the limited nutrients is tight as players expand their mycelium networks or even attack and cut off each other's paths in search of spores and nutrient cubes. Mycelium is a race, and the first player to collect 10 nutrient cubes wins the game. To set up, each player chooses a colour and takes its player board, mushlings and paths. Shuffle the mushling deck and deal 4 cards to each player. Choose a first player and, in clockwise order, deal a 5th card to the second player, a 5th and 6th card to the third player, and a 5th, 6th and 7th card to the 4th player. Give each player 3 spore tokens. These can be placed here. Each of the spore tokens will say 3 spore value on its back, meaning that each of these tokens can be spent as 3 spores during the game. Lay out the board on the side corresponding to your player count. Spaces showing this icon are spore caves, and you should place 3 spore tokens into each of the caves. These are sources of spores for your mushlings. The spaces showing trees, each with its own individual icon, are called nutrient trees, and you'll place 1 nutrient cube onto each of these. Also place 1 nutrient on the centre tree, the willow. These are sources of the nutrient cubes your mushlings need to win the game. Each player-coloured hex represents one of the player's colonies, and this is where you'll be gathering your nutrients and spores back to. Shuffle the rest of the mushling card deck and place it in a draw pile in the bottom right corner near the mushroom. Find the event deck. If you're playing with 3 players, remove all the walnut cards from the deck, and then shuffle what remains and place it near the board. Keep attack tokens and unused spores and nutrients nearby for later. To complete setup, you'll resolve the Explore phase, in which each player will place their 3 Gatherer mushlings onto the board. This is done in turn order, the first player placing all 3 of their mushlings, then the second player, and so on. Mushlings may be placed into spore caves, onto nutrient trees, including the central tree, or into the special mushroom space in the bottom right corner. Multiple mushlings belonging to the same or different players may occupy the same space. The tactical reasons for choosing one space over another will become clear as we explain more of the rules. But suffice it to say that at this point you are signalling which spores or nutrients you're going to try to gather on your first turn. Once all players have finished their explore phases, play begins with the first player's first turn. Mycelium is played in turns, starting from the first player and going clockwise around the table. A turn is resolved in 5 steps, which are resolved in sequence before the next player begins. First is the nutrient card phase, where an event card is used to reseed the board with nutrients or spores that players have been collecting. Second is the action phase, where you may take any number of actions that you can afford, primarily to build paths, attack opponents' paths, or make use of your mushling cards. Third is the gather phase, where if you have the necessary mycelial network path between your gatherer mushlings and your colony, you'll be able to bring back nutrients and spores. Fourth is the place phase, where you place your mushlings back out onto the board the same way you did in setup, declaring your intent for the next round. And then finally is the draw phase, where you draw a mushling card and discard your hand limit if required. As you can see, the game is all about gathering resources and nutrients and having to declare that 1 round ahead of time and then defend your position. Having declared your intent at the end of your turn, you'll have to wait until all other players have played, possibly destroying your paths or taking the resources you are hoping for, before knowing whether your next turn is going to be efficient or not. build up your plans, and perhaps keep a good supply of helpful mushling cards in hands to make sure things go your way, and you'll be best placed to win the race to 10 nutrients. Now let's have a look at each of those 5 steps of a turn in detail. The first step is the nutrient card phase, and the active player draws one card from this deck and resolves it. Most of these cards add new nutrient cubes to the board, or move nutrient cubes to the central willow. The willow is likely to be the most profitable place to gain nutrients. There are also cards which add new spores to the spore caves, or allow players to draw new cards. If this deck ever runs out, shuffle the discard pile into a new deck. Second is the action phase. The active player may take any number of these 5 actions as long as they can afford them. They may be done any number of times and in any order. These are to use a card action, build a path, spawn a spore, draw a card, or attack another player's path. To play a card, choose a mushling card from your hand, play it to the discard pile, and resolve its action ability. Some cards will give you a choice between 2 different actions, and you may resolve one but not the other. An effect which says reaction is not resolved in this way. This card can be revealed and played at any time, including another player's turn, as long as it meets the reveal condition on the card. The second action is to build a path, and the cost of this is 3 spore value, which can be met by spending 1 spore token from your supply, or by discarding mushling cards from your hand whose spore value, shown here, adds up to 3. Take a path from your supply, or from anywhere on the board if you've run out, and place it on any edge between 2 hexagons which is connected to at least one of your existing paths. This can include as a single chain or as a branched path. All 6 edges around your colony count as pre-printed paths, so this would also be legal. A single edge can be shared by paths from 2 different players, but not by more than 2 paths, and not by 2 paths of the same player. Building up your networks of paths is critical to make the routes by which your mushlings will bring home nutrients and spores. The third and fourth action are exchange actions, and to do this you must discard 2 mushlings of the same type from your hand without considering their text. You can either discard 2 cards to add a spore token to any one spore cave on the board, or you can discard 2 mushling cards to draw 1 new mushling card from the deck. Your last option is to attack another player's path. This is done to try to remove opponents' paths from the board, either to make space for your own, or to make a gap in that player's mycelial network. Firstly, choose any single opposing path which is connected to one of your paths. In this case, blue could attack any one of these 4 paths. The attacking player must choose a mushling card from hand and play it face down on the table. The defender may optionally play 1 mushling card in defense. If both players play a card, then both cards are now revealed. For winning and losing the battle, what's important on these cards is the combat value, shown on this top leaf here. In this case, blue has a combat value of 5 to green's 4. Both players now have the opportunity to increase their combat values either by playing combat tokens, which they've previously gathered, or by playing reinforcement cards, showing this icon and having a reinforcement reaction from their hands. Any played combat tokens are worth +1 combat value, and reinforcement cards are worth whatever is printed on the card. There's no specific turn order. Players can simply play these tokens and cards until neither player wishes to play anymore. If the attacker's final combat value exceeds the defender's, then the attacker wins. The path which was under attack is destroyed, and the attacker wins a combat token. If the defender's combat value were equal or higher, then the defender wins, the path is not lost, and the defender draws 1 mushling card. Finally, if any warrior or thief cards were revealed as part of the combat, These often have "if you reveal this card in combat" reactions, and these are resolved now, starting with the attacker, then the defender. Any cards which were played or revealed, as well as any combat tokens, are now discarded. If the defender chooses not to play a card in defense, then the path is automatically lost. In this case, nobody has the opportunity to play reinforcements or combat tokens, and the attacker does not gain a bonus attack token as reward. However, the attacker's card is still revealed, resolved if it has a reaction, and discarded. The third phase of your turn is the gather phase, and this is where your mushlings will bring resources and nutrients back to your colony. For a mushling to gather, there must be a bonded path, which is a path along the edge of the mushling's hex, which is connected through a continuous path back to your colony. If such a path exists, then the mushling gathers one resource or one spore token. This path is bonded, and so this nutrient would be collected. This path is also bonded. It's adjacent to this spore cave and adjacent to the colony, so this automatically comes back like so. But this spore cave has no bonded path. Although this path leads up to its corner, there is no path along the edge through which this mushling can bring the spores back. When multiple mushlings are trying to gather from the same hex at the same time, each must have its own bonded path. This birch hex has only one bonded path for red, coming back through here, so even though there's two mushlings here, only one of them can bring a nutrient home. But if red had built a path here, then there would be two bonded paths, and both of the nutrients could be brought. It matters only that this hex has the required number of paths adjacent, not that the full pathway back to the colony is unique. The exception to these rules is the mushroom. This is a special space which is not part of the main map, and you can always bring a mushling back to your colony from there and draw one card as reward. Any mushling who, for whatever reason, can't gather a resource simply comes back empty-handed. Any spore tokens or nutrients you gather are added to your player board. Fourth is the place phase, and following exactly the same rules as Setup's Explore phase, you must now place all three of your mushlings into any combination of nutrient trees, spore caves, and the mushroom. Finally is the draw phase. Draw one mushling card into hand, and at this point, if you have more than 7 cards, discard down to 7. Continue taking turns in this way until one player has gained at least 10 nutrients. The game ends immediately, and that player wins. The core Mycelium game is played at either 3 or 4 players. You can also play a 4-player team mode, in which the players opposite each other team up against their opponents. The winning team will be the first to gather a total of 15 nutrients between the two players, with neither player allowed to gain more than 10 individually. There is one new action for the actions phase. Teammates may make a 1-for-1 exchange of mushling cards between them. But this must be done face up so that all 4 players can see the cards. All communication between teammates is open, that is, can be heard by the other team. And you're never allowed to attack a teammate's path, something which could otherwise have had a few tactical benefits if you used them right. The team versus team rules can also be used to play Mycelium at 2 players, each player playing two-handed as each of the colonies on one team. You may choose to play with the Sporium module, a store giving you various items that you can purchase for spores. You have a new action on your turn, which is to buy 1 or more items from the Sporium. When you buy an item, add it permanently to your tableau, and gain its bonus on an ongoing basis. Replenish the display at the end of your turn. Finally, there is the Hero Tavern module, which can introduce hero mushlings to the game. You'll place the Hero Tavern on the board, as well as 2 face-up hero mushlings, and mushlings can visit the tavern the same way they visit the mushroom. When gathering from the Hero Tavern, you must spend a combat token, And if you do, you get to take one of the hero mushling cards from the display, which you immediately replenish from the top of the deck, or you can draw blindly from the deck. These are added face up to your tableau, and they don't count towards your hand limit, nor do they count as regular mushling cards. Meaning that other mushlings which specifically affect mushling cards do not affect the heroes. Like a normal card, hero mushlings are single use, after which they're returned to the bottom of the hero deck. And that's how to play Mycelium, a mushling game.
Check out the project page of Mycelium, a Mushling Game. We'll put the link in the description below so you can check it out. If you find this video useful, please help us by hitting that like button and subscribe to the Dice Tower if you haven't already done so.
And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please leave that in the comments section below.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.